On a sun-drenched afternoon, the air filled with the scent of fresh flowers and laughter, Sarah and Michael stood under a beautifully decorated archway. The scene was straight out of a fairy tale, with white chairs set up on lush, green lawns and petals strewn along the aisle. Family and friends from near and far had gathered, cameras in hand, ready to capture every moment of this much-anticipated union. Sarah, radiant in a flowing white gown, clutched her bouquet of wildflowers tightly as her father walked her down the aisle. There was a gentle rustle of silk and chiffon as she moved, each step taking her closer to Michael, who awaited her with a nervous but excited smile. His suit was impeccably tailored, the light gray fabric contrasting sharply against the bright blue sky. The ceremony began with heartfelt vows that they had written themselves. Sarah's voice trembled with emotion as she spoke of her love and commitment, promising to stand by Michael through all of life's ups and downs. Michael's vows were equally touching, his promises laced with humor and profound sincerity, eliciting smiles and a few happy tears from the audience. As they exchanged rings, a light breeze picked up, adding a natural melody with the soft tinkling of wind chimes placed around the venue. The officiant pronounced them husband and wife, and as they kissed, applause broke out, mingling with the cheerful chirping of birds overhead. The rest of the afternoon was a blur of celebration. Guests mingled, glasses clinked, and laughter echoed through the air. The couple danced their first dance on a makeshift dance floor, their movements graceful and filled with joy. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the day's festivities, everyone agreed it was a perfect start to Sarah and Michael's journey together. However, as the evening progressed, a shadow fell over the celebration. What began as the happiest day of their lives was about to take a turn that no one could have anticipated. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the lawn, Sarah and Michael's magical day continued with laughter and merry chatter. The newlyweds mingled with guests, their faces alight with happiness. Yet within moments, the light in Sarah's eyes dimmed slightly as she clutched her stomach, a small frown creasing her brow. Michael noticed her discomfort and asked if she was okay, to which she nodded, dismissing it as just a little tiredness from the day's excitement. But as they moved to another group of well-wishers, Michael too began to feel uneasy. A strange sensation of dizziness clouded his thoughts, and his steps faltered. Concerned, Sarah steadied him, her own discomfort momentarily forgotten. Their symptoms gradually worsened. The slight dizziness turned into a gripping nausea for both. The joyous atmosphere around them now clashed starkly with the growing unease they felt. Seeing their pale faces, a close friend approached, asking if everything was all right. Sarah attempted a reassuring smile that didn't quite reach her eyes, while Michael leaned heavily on a nearby table, his face ashen. The friend, alarmed now, suggested they sit down and rest. They agreed, thinking a brief pause might help them regain their composure. However, sitting down did little to alleviate their symptoms. Sarah's head throbbed painfully, and Michael's vision began to blur. It wasn't long before other guests took notice, their expressions turning from festive to fraught as they gathered around the couple. Someone brought them water, while another guest called for more help, realizing that this was more than just fatigue or a minor ailment. The situation escalated quickly as both Sarah and Michael's conditions took a turn for the worse. Michael, struggling to stay conscious, whispered to Sarah, trying to assure her that they would be fine, but his voice was weak. Sarah, fighting through the pain, squeezed his hand, her worry for him overtaking her own fears. The realization that something was seriously wrong sent a ripple of panic through the wedding party. As murmurs of concern spread, the festive music and laughter that had filled the air just moments before were now replaced by tense whispers and calls for an ambulance. The quick escalation of Sarah and Michael's condition from mere discomfort to severe illness alarmed everyone at the wedding. While a few guests tried to keep the couple calm, reassuring them help was on the way, others frantically dialed emergency services, their voices tense as they described the symptoms to the dispatcher. As they waited for the ambulance, Sarah's brother, James, took charge, asking the guests to give Sarah and Michael some space. He knelt beside them, holding Sarah's hand while using his free hand to fan Michael with a nearby program. The air was filled with a mix of concern and whispered prayers from the surrounding family and friends. When the ambulance finally arrived, the paramedics quickly assessed the situation. They maneuvered through the crowd of worried onlookers, their professional calm a stark contrast to the anxious murmurs of the wedding guests. With efficient movements, they checked vital signs and listened carefully to the descriptions of symptoms given by James and another bridesmaid who had stayed close to the couple throughout the event. The paramedics administered oxygen to both Sarah and Michael as they prepared for immediate transport to the hospital. The urgency was palpable. The medical team's quick questions and checks for allergies or pre-existing conditions filled the air as they worked. Guests stepped back, forming a path to the ambulance, their faces a mix of fear and concern, whispering hopes for the couple's quick recovery. As Sarah and Michael were gently lifted onto stretchers, their hands still intertwined, a hush fell over the crowd. The flashing lights of the ambulance cast a surreal glow on the scene, replacing the soft twilight that had earlier bathed the wedding in warmth. The contrast was stark and chilling. The day had started with joy and celebration, but was ending in uncertainty and fear. With a final check to ensure everything was secure, the paramedics closed the ambulance doors, and with lights flashing and sirens starting to wail, they swiftly departed for the hospital. The remaining guests stood in shocked silence, watching as the vehicle disappeared down the road. Whispers of worry and speculation about what could have caused such a sudden illness began to circulate, with many glances cast towards the remnants of the wedding feast, wondering if the cause might be found there. Meanwhile, family members gathered their belongings and emotions, preparing to follow the ambulance to the hospital, clinging to hope yet bracing for answers. The drive to the hospital was tense and quiet, with only the sound of the ambulance's siren cutting through the night. Inside the vehicle, the paramedics continued to monitor Sarah and Michael, who were now both semi-conscious, their faces etched with discomfort and confusion. The paramedics spoke in calm, steady voices, reassuring them and keeping them informed of what was happening. Back at the wedding venue, the mood had shifted dramatically. The music had stopped, and the decorations that had earlier shimmered under the festive lights now seemed to droop in the dimming light. Friends and family members were hurriedly gathering their things, their earlier joy replaced by worry and haste to reach the hospital. At the hospital, the emergency team was on alert, having been prepped by the paramedics en route about the serious condition of the couple. As the ambulance pulled into the emergency bay, doctors and nurses were ready with wheelchairs, swiftly moving Sarah and Michael to the emergency room. Their expertise was evident as they worked quickly to hook up IV lines and run immediate tests to understand the severity of their condition. The waiting area began to fill with guests from the wedding, all waiting anxiously for any news. Whispers filled the air, with speculation about the cause of such a sudden and severe reaction. Some wondered aloud if it could have been an allergic reaction, while others feared something more sinister, like poisoning, given the rapid onset of symptoms. Inside the emergency room, doctors ordered a series of tests, including blood work and scans, to pinpoint the exact cause of Sarah and Michael's distress. The couple, though weak, tried to answer questions about what they had eaten and any unusual substances they might have encountered. Every detail could be crucial in diagnosing their condition. The hospital staff moved with a sense of urgency, well aware that time was of the essence in cases like these. The initial tests showed abnormal results, raising more concerns and prompting further investigation. Doctors discussed among themselves, weighing the possibilities and planning the next steps in treatment. Meanwhile, the waiting room was a mix of tears and comforting embraces. The wedding guests, still in their formal attire, formed small groups, supporting each other and holding on to hope. Sarah's mother, her eyes red from crying, was consoled by relatives who assured her that the hospital staff was doing everything possible. James, taking on a protective role, tried to keep everyone calm, providing updates as he received them from the medical team. He made calls to relatives who hadn't been at the wedding, his voice breaking as he explained the situation. The community of family and friends, brought together for what was meant to be a celebration, now found themselves bonding over shared concern and a collective hope for a miracle. As the night wore on, the emergency room's flurry of activity around Sarah and Michael didn't let up. Doctors and nurses moved in and out of the treatment area, their faces set with concentration and urgency. Every now and then, one of them would come out to update the family, who were clinging to every piece of information, trying to understand what was happening to their loved ones. Inside the treatment room, the medical team was in full swing, their focus sharp as they administered various medications to counteract the symptoms. Sarah and Michael, now fully aware but still very weak, were confused and scared. They held hands across their adjacent beds, drawing comfort from each other's presence, their fingers tightly interlaced as they faced this frightening ordeal together. The lead doctor, Dr. Ellis, a seasoned professional with years of experience in emergency medicine, reviewed their test results, which indicated severe toxicity. He ordered more specific tests to identify the toxin's nature while consulting with a toxicologist via phone. The situation was rare and perplexing, pushing the medical team to explore all possible angles. Back in the waiting area, the mood was somber. The wedding guests had formed a close-knit circle, some praying quietly, others discussing in hushed tones what could have caused such a sudden downturn in the couple's health. Theories varied from food poisoning to an allergic reaction, but none had enough information to form a definitive conclusion. James, still acting as the family spokesperson, received another update, this time more promising. Dr. Ellis explained that they were making progress in stabilizing Sarah and Michael, though the next few hours would be critical in determining the recovery path. This news brought a mixed reaction. Relief at some positive development, yet anxiety knowing they were not out of the woods yet. As the hours ticked by, the waiting room saw more people arrive, friends who had heard the news and came rushing to offer support. Coffee and snacks were brought in by hospital volunteers, providing some comfort to the weary group. Conversations started to include fond memories of the couple, recounting tales of their adventures together and their plans for the future, which seemed so threatened now. Inside the treatment room, Sarah and Michael were slowly responding to the treatments. The toxins were gradually being neutralized, but the ordeal had taken its toll on their bodies. They were exhausted, both physically and emotionally, yet grateful for the medical care that was bringing them back from the brink. Dr. Ellis, satisfied with the progress, finally had enough information to provide a more comprehensive update. He gathered the family in a private room to discuss his findings. He explained that the toxin was indeed from an external source, likely ingested during the wedding. The focus would now shift to investigating how the toxin got into their systems and ensuring their continued recovery. This explanation, while answering some questions, opened up a whole new set of worries about the safety of everyone else at the wedding. The family, while relieved that Sarah and Michael were recovering, now faced the daunting prospect of dealing with the implications of what had happened. Throughout the night, as Sarah and Michael slowly began to stabilize under the watchful eyes of the hospital staff, the focus shifted towards investigating the source of the toxin that had so dramatically impacted their wedding day. Dr. Ellis, alongside a team of investigators, began piecing together the sequence of events, scrutinizing every detail of the wedding that could have potentially introduced the harmful substance. The investigation first centered around the wedding feast, as food poisoning seemed the most likely culprit. Samples of each dish served at the wedding were collected and sent for analysis. The catering team was interviewed. Each member asked about their role in the preparation and handling of the food. The caterers were cooperative, equally shocked and concerned about the incident, providing full transparency in their processes. Simultaneously, a detailed inspection of the wedding venue was conducted. The beautiful rustic setting that had provided such a picturesque backdrop for Sarah and Michael's special day was now the focus of a thorough examination. Investigators looked for any unusual substances or contaminants that could have accidentally or intentionally been introduced into the environment. Dr. Ellis also reached out to the guests, requesting information from anyone who might have noticed unusual activities or unfamiliar faces at the event. This was a sensitive part of the investigation, as it involved questioning the people who had come to celebrate a joyous occasion, now tainted by the tragedy. Guests recounted their experiences of the day, trying to recall any detail that might be helpful. As the investigation continued, the test results from the food samples began to arrive. One particular dish, a specialty cake that had been a highlight of the wedding menu, tested positive for the presence of a rare and highly toxic substance. This discovery was a significant breakthrough and shifted the investigation towards the bakery that had supplied the cake. The baker, known in the community for her exquisite cakes and desserts, was devastated to hear the news. She cooperated fully with the investigators, providing records of her ingredient suppliers and detailing her baking process. It became clear that the contamination was likely due to an externally sourced ingredient. The focus now turned to tracing the supply chain of the ingredients used in the cake. Meanwhile, at the hospital, as Sarah and Michael were informed about the findings, their relief at knowing the source of their illness was mixed with disbelief and a growing sense of vulnerability. How something meant to be so sweet and celebratory could turn potentially fatal was beyond their comprehension. The community around them, both at the hospital and beyond, rallied in support. The incident, while shocking, brought people closer as they collectively sought answers and reassurance that such an event would not recur. The warmth and solidarity shown by their friends and family provided a comforting contrast to the cold facts of the investigation. With the toxin identified and its source traced, preventive measures were discussed among the community leaders and business owners to ensure stricter controls and safety standards in the future. For Sarah and Michael, the path to recovery was now not just about physical healing, but also about rebuilding the trust and security that their wedding day should have symbolized. As the days passed, Sarah and Michael's physical recovery progressed steadily, thanks to the vigilant care of the hospital staff. Their spirits began to lift, buoyed by the outpouring of support from their community. Family, friends, and even strangers sent messages of encouragement, flowers and cards, filling their hospital room with reminders of people's goodwill. Outside the hospital, the repercussions of the incident continued to ripple through the community. The bakery responsible for the cake faced intense scrutiny. The owner, deeply apologetic and committed to making amends, voluntarily shut down to conduct a full review of her sourcing and baking processes. She also offered to cover medical expenses and extended a personal apology to Sarah and Michael, distressed by the pain her cake had inadvertently caused. Meanwhile, the local health department took the incident as a catalyst to tighten food safety regulations. Workshops and training sessions were set up for local businesses to prevent such an incident from happening again. These measures were met with positive responses, as vendors and restaurant owners recognized the importance of vigilance in food preparation and the potential consequences of negligence. Back at the hospital, Sarah and Michael began meeting with a counselor to help them process the traumatic experience. These sessions provided them a safe space to express their fears and anxieties about the future. The counselor worked with them to build resilience and develop strategies for coping with the emotional aftermath of their near-fatal experience. The community's response was a profound testament to the human spirit's capacity for empathy and support. A fundraising event was organized by the couple's friends to help with the ongoing medical costs and to support the bakery owner in her efforts to rebuild her business. The event was well attended, featuring local musicians, a silent auction, and a community potluck, symbolizing the collective healing and the community's resolve to stand together in times of adversity. As Sarah and Michael were finally discharged from the hospital, their departure was marked by cheers and applause from the hospital staff and visiting family members. The couple felt overwhelmed with gratitude. Their journey from the joyous start of their wedding day through the ordeal that followed having deepened their appreciation for each other and their community. In the weeks that followed, life slowly began to return to a new normal for Sarah and Michael. They resumed wedding plans, this time with a smaller, more intimate ceremony planned, involving only close family and friends. This decision reflected their new perspective on life, valuing closeness and simplicity over grandeur. The story of their ordeal and the subsequent community support received local media attention, highlighting not just the dangers of overlooked aspects of food safety, but also the powerful connections within a community that can emerge in the face of adversity. As Sarah and Michael stood together, hand in hand, ready to exchange vows once again, they felt not just as survivors, but as embodiments of resilience and renewed trust in the power of community and love. On a bright and clear morning, several weeks after the traumatic events that had almost cost them their lives, Sarah and Michael stood once again under a floral arch. This time, however, the setting was different. They had chosen a small garden in Sarah's childhood home, a place filled with warm memories and a sense of safety. The guest list was significantly shorter, limited to immediate family and a few close friends, each of whom had been a pillar of support through the challenging times. The atmosphere was subdued, but filled with an intense kind of joy, a deeper appreciation for the moment. There was a collective breath of relief and contentment as the couple exchanged vows, their voices steady and sure. These vows were not just promises for the future, but also affirmations of their resilience and mutual support, forged in the fire of their recent ordeal. After the ceremony, the reception was a quiet affair in the backyard. Tables were set with homemade dishes, each prepared by family members, avoiding external catering to control the environment safely. Laughter and conversation flowed more freely now, the previous tension replaced by a celebration of life and recovery. During the reception, Michael took a moment to address the gathering. He thanked everyone for their support and shared how the experience had taught him the true value of community and the strength of human spirit. His words were heartfelt and moving, prompting nods and teary eyes among the guests. Sarah followed with her own thanks, particularly expressing gratitude toward the medical team and the local businesses that had stepped up to help tighten safety protocols. She talked about the importance of forgiveness and growth, highlighting how the bakery owner had taken responsibility and made significant changes to ensure such an incident would never happen again. Her speech culminated in a toast to new beginnings and the health and happiness of all present. As the day wound down, guests took their leave with hugs and well wishes, feeling closer than ever. Sarah and Michael spent the last moments of the evening walking through the garden, hand in hand, reflecting on their journey. They discussed plans for their future, not just in terms of their personal lives, but also how they could contribute to their community. They wanted to advocate for stronger community health and safety measures and provide support for those who had undergone similar trials. The story of Sarah and Michael's wedding, the subsequent poisoning, and their community's response was later featured in a local newspaper. It served as a powerful reminder of vulnerability and the strength that can arise from it. It sparked discussions across various platforms about the importance of vigilance in public safety and the impact of community support in times of crisis. As they moved forward, Sarah and Michael found strength in each other and their community. They knew life would never be quite the same, but they were ready to face it together, with a deep understanding of the fragility of life and the incredible power of human connection and resilience. Their love, tested under the most harrowing circumstances, had emerged stronger, a beacon of hope and renewal.